Our next speaker is Eric Red Normington from IBEW 668.
Well, that's going to be a tough act to follow there. Very charismatic speaker. Thank you. My name is Eric Red Normington. Ever since I've been a little kid, in some form or fashion, they called me Red. I don't have any hair anymore. My beard used to be red, but I think they're going to be calling me Whitey before it's over with. I'm getting a lot more, finally starting to look my age. Again, my name is Eric Red Normington. I'm a journeyman wireman in the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I'm also the local president here in Lafayette of IBEW 668. I want to share a quote that I read recently about labor, and I quote, "Labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could have never existed if labor hadn't existed first. Labor is superior of capital and deserves much higher consideration," close quote. That is from Abraham Lincoln, first congressional address to Congress, December 3rd, 1861. So those words ring true now more than ever, that all wealth comes from labor. In today's corporate America, corporate grind and corporate greed, that statement gets lost. Somehow labor is not valued as it was back 40 years ago, or even when Lincoln spoke that statement. When it comes to labor unions and unionism, there's several different topics. We could talk till we're blue in the face about all the different things that unions and unionism embodies, but there's really three big points at the top that I want to talk about, and that's a living wage, affordable health care, and a decent retirement. You know, if big business gave every worker a living wage, affordable health care, and a decent retirement, there wouldn't be any need for labor unions. And everybody knows that Wall Street, big business, the Fortune 500, they want to pay the minimum. And that's why unions were started in the beginning, in the first place. When you invest in a worker, you invest in the community. When you invest in a worker, you give the worker purpose. And that purpose is to provide for themselves and their loved ones without assistance. So when you have a living wage, the person can buy the goods and services that they need to survive, maybe even save a little bit, and they do it without assistance. They will also give back to the system money in the form of taxes. And they will also have the purchasing power to build and further the economy. A living wage gives a worker purpose. I want to share one other quote that I read recently too. No man can, and I quote, "No man can be a good citizen unless he has a wage more than sufficient to cover the bare cost of living, the hours of labor short enough so that when the days of work are done, he has time and energy to bear his share of management of the community to help in carrying the general load. We keep countless men from being good citizens by conditions of life which we surround them," close quote. That was from Teddy Roosevelt way back when. I don't have an actual date on that, but again, a very powerful statement, a very simple statement. When you invest in a worker, you invest in the community. You know, when it comes to labor and wages, there's several laws that have been under attack. Davis-Bacon has been modified several times. It's been weakened. Indiana State Common Construction Wage was repealed under the Pence administration in 2015. Right-to-work laws were instituted by the Daniels administration in 2012. Prevailing wages from coast to coast have been under attack for years. It's really set off a race to the bottom. When a free market conservative says competitive, that's a race to the bottom. When you have a living wage and a prevailing wage, that sets off a race to the top. Currently, I just read, just on the 18th of this month, just a couple days ago, I read that there is currently a Department of Labor rule that is referred to as tip stealing, and that it allows, this rule could institute employers to pocket all of their workers' tips providing that they at least pay that worker a minimum wage. If that Department of Labor rule happens, it is estimated that $5.8 billion in tips will be lost. And it's also estimated that $4.6 billion would be taken from women because women dominate the food service industry. I read another interesting fact about women currently, that the women in the American labor pool represent 51% of the workforce, but yet they only make 80% of what a man makes. It's completely unacceptable. Some people have said, and I don't know if it's true, that the reason women have been pushed up to 51% is that corporate America can basically deduct their wages by 20%. I'm hoping that that's not true, but one thing that is true is that women make up 51% of the labor force and only get paid 80% of what a man makes. What is interesting about union establishments is there's no gender bias in a union establishment. You are paid by your classification. If you can do the job, you make the wage. Some of the classifications are welder, assembler, pipe fitter, electrician, so on and so forth. It is obvious that we need to do something about the wage inequality and the gender inequality. So now that we've been talking about kind of a background of wages being under attack, the labor movement and unions being under attack since basically the late 70s, and you know how we got here, what are we going to do moving forward? And to me, it's quite simple. We need to find labor-friendly candidates, and we have to have labor-friendly candidates win those offices. Second, we got to get big money out of politics. We need to end Citizens United. We need to end Americans for Prosperity. When you have a handful of billionaires that pour millions and millions of dollars into the political process, that's not democracy. That's oligarchy. And lastly, we got to get people involved, just like this group today. You know, I'm involved in labor issues, labor president, union president, and we got to fight. And I heard a long time ago that one of the best statements I've ever heard just to get involved and be an activist, shortened into one statement, is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.